Welcome to How to Talk to Kids About Anything with Dr. Robyn Silverman, a podcast loaded with practical tips, powerful scripts, personal stories, and simple steps to make even the toughest conversations easier. So get ready to get the information you need to make the impact you want from someone you trust, your friend, parenting expert, Dr. Robyn Silverman.
Hello and welcome to How to Talk to Kids About Anything, where we give you the tips, scripts, stories, and steps to make even the toughest conversations easier. I'm so honored to be your host, Dr. Robyn Silverman, child and teen development specialist, author, and speaker, and most importantly, parent of two great kids who give me the opportunity to love, learn, and grow every single day, whether I want to or not. Believe me, I get it. It's not always easy, but we're in this together, and we have some great people helping us along the way. Now, all children and teens get stressed, anxious, and angry sometimes. This is normal. Being able to positively deal with stress, anxiety, and anger are important skills to learn. All these skills can be employed at home, in school, and other learning environments. And when we are in frustrating situations with friends and peers, yes, we need them there too. But not all kids learn these strategies naturally. They need a trusted adult to help them learn how to self-soothe and calm down, balance their energy and emotions, and process challenging feelings. So how can we help our children and teens learn these coping strategies? For that, we turn to Janine Halloran. Janine Halloran is a licensed mental health counselor who has been working with children, teens, and their families for 20 years. She has been helping children and teens build their coping skills through her career in a variety of settings, including schools and mental health clinics, and in her private practice. She is the author of the best-selling Coping Skills for Kids workbook and the host of the Calm and Connected podcast. Her work has been featured in the Boston Globe and the Huffington Post and the Skim newsletter. Janine lives in Massachusetts with her husband and two children. Welcome, Janine, to How to Talk to Kids About Anything.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Robyn.
I'm so excited to have you, and I really appreciate your enthusiasm. Before we jump into the conversation, can you tell us what got you up in the morning and what got you so interested in teaching kids and teens coping skills?
Oh my gosh. Well, what got me really interested in teaching kids and teens coping skills was actually when I was in graduate school. So I remember sitting in graduate school and they're talking about coping skills, and they gave you the typical things that they talk about. So they talked about deep breathing and they talk about, progressive muscle relaxation and all that stuff. And I remember feeling like, okay, I have some strategies, and then walking into a school building and feeling completely lost when, I had a kid who was really having a hard time. And I went through all my strategies and I had nothing. I had nothing left.
This is not one size fits all here.
Right, exactly. And then I was like, okay, so I need to just kind of gather some different ideas of what will work for a child. So, working in a school, trying to figure out what helps the kids. I used to have a coping skills poster on the back of the door of my offices so kids could add to it. So like hearing from other kids what worked for them, hearing from other colleagues and hearing what had really been helpful, looking at the research, looking at, what's evidence-based, that kind of thing. But also just hearing from the students that I worked with, from the clients, that has been most valuable to me. That's where I hear about some really interesting, unique, different things. And I love to hear what they have to say, because a lot of times they know. They'll say, this really works for me. This is awesome. This is fantastic. Or please don't make me do that again.
Oh my gosh. You just tickled my brain just now. So what is the most sort of original idea that you heard that you actually thought was actually a really great technique?
So this is interesting. I was working with somebody a few years ago, and I remember, they were really struggling with anxiety and trying to figure out what they could do. And they said to me one day, you know what I do? I trace patterns. I just trace patterns, and I'm sitting down, and I'm she was babysitting with a child, and she's like, I got really anxious, and then I just started tracing shapes in the rug and shapes, wherever I was sitting or when I'm in school. And I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's a great one. Yeah.
And it was really interesting to see. And I was like, well, that's something I'm going to just file. And so it actually got into the coping skills for kids and coping skills for teens
I
workbook.
saw it and actually did it right there on the page, since you have the patterns right there. And I did it because I wanted to see what that was like. I doodle a lot when I'm, feeling that way, and do patterns. So I think that's probably integrating both of those skills together. But I also like that the person was saying to do it in the rug, because that's like very sensory, and you've got that plushy rug at the same time, or maybe it's not plush, but it's like you really feel something rather than just the paper. So that's actually really interesting. If maybe, tracing a pattern on paper isn't quite doing it, there are other ways you can do it, whether it's like with a pencil and drawing, or with your finger on a surface that has some kind of feel to it. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And you know what? For little kids, I'd love for them to trace in sand, or, having like using a sand tray, which is so fun.
Yes.
But they can trace in there, and there's something so soothing for some kids. The kids who really dig on sand, they would love that.
Other kids who are like, I do not like sand. I'm one of those people who love going to the ocean, but just wish that it didn't have all that sand there. So, children and teens clearly have a lot of stressors in their lives, especially these days. And whether they're coping with the common frustrations with school or friends or family life, or if they're really getting upset more with, global issues, racism, and or like financial upheaval in their families, displacement, loss of a loved one. Kids and teens clearly need coping skills to deal with emotions that come from a variety of stressors. So for the parents and educators who are listening here, how can they begin to talk to young people about acquiring these coping skills, why they need them, where they can start, especially when they know somebody is suffering? What's the starting point there?
For me, I think it's really having that relationship. I think to be able to have that connection with somebody and say to them, this is what I'm noticing, and this is what I'm seeing. And I'm wondering, what are the things, how do you deal with these emotions? How do you manage this? Just starting the dialogue. What works for you? And would you like some extra information? Would you like some more help to try and figure out some other things that you could do? Try to just expand your ways of coping and dealing with things. And a lot of times when I talk with kids, I don't necessarily sit down and say, let's talk about your coping skills. Nobody wants to do that.
Nobody wants to do that. That's like the recipe for I don't know or shut down.
Right. Exactly. So when I start talking, when I first start introducing coping skills to kids, usually they are coming to me for therapy, so they know they're there for a reason.
Right. Good point.
We're all on the same page. But when we are actually getting down to the nitty gritty and practicing and trying, I don't say we're going to try the coping skill of tracing a pattern, or we're going to try the coping skill of deep breathing with your hand. I just say, let's try this thing. I heard about it from somebody else. It seems like it really works for them. So why don't we try it with you? And then really having the dialogue around doing it together. So that's the other thing I like to do with kids and teens when I work with them. I don't make them sit there and do progressive muscle relaxation while I watch them. That's weird.
Do you give them that as an idea and then ask them to do it for homework?
No, I actually do it with them in the room. We'll do it together.
Oh, so you're not watching them, you're doing it, so then they don't feel so strange. That's such a great information piece for parents and educators right now. I just want to put high beams on that if you want a child to be engaging in a new technique, doing it with them can really help to put them at ease, because then both people are doing it and you're both weirdos, right, at that time.
Right. Exactly. That's how I did this with a teen client of mine, and she wasn't super jazzed about trying mindfulness. And I said, well, let me introduce you to mindfulness the way I was introduced to mindfulness, and that is by chocolate. And we will have chocolate together, and we will try it. And we tried it. And afterwards, she's like, I really didn't like that chocolate. And I said, you know what? I didn't either. That was weird. We should try a different kind of chocolate next time.
Gosh, I want to have mindfulness with you too. I like dark chocolate. Let's have our mindful moment with chocolate. That sounds like such a good idea. Usually people think about mindfulness as like, oh, we're going to put on like some tin, tin, tin music and we're going to, sit and quietly think about our toes. It's nice to have something that can really appeal to children and teens like chocolate. That's really innovative.
Oh, yeah. And I have to tell you, because I've been doing telehealth because of COVID, I actually sent a couple of my clients chocolate in the mail. And so one of he's little. I mean, he's not super little. He's like 10, but he still gets excited about chocolate.
Who wouldn't?
So, I know, right? And so he's like opening the package and because I wrote to him, like, don't open it until it's time for us to meet.
because it'd be gone.
Because it would be gone. Exactly. And so he's opening it and his eyes got so big. He's like, you sent me these. I love these.
Oh my gosh, that is so great. I love it. Usually when we think about coping skills, we might come up with things like, as you mentioned, like taking deep breaths, or, now we have other ones like what you have just mentioned, which is mindfulness through chocolate and writing in the sand. Some people might think about like counting down from 10 or going for a run, but you have many that you talk about in your books, and you offer these to kids and teens. You even talk about different types of coping skills, from calming coping skills to physical to distracting. Why would we use one family of coping skills over another calming skills? Like, how are calming coping skills or physical coping skills or distracting coping skills used in different ways with different people?
So the thing I was realizing over time when I was working with kids is I would have kids who would gravitate towards certain ways of coping. So I would have my kids who would love to draw, and I'd have my readers, but then I'd also have my movers and my shakers, the ones who really needed to like get their body up and moving. And that was a way that as long as it was being safe and they were being okay with, the room and everything like that, to get that energy out, to like figure out a way to get that movement out. And so I tend to find that it's good to try the different types of coping styles, the ones that you mentioned. But that kids tend to like gravitate towards one or the other just based on their personality. Just like they have different learning styles, they have different coping styles. And so I really love to be able to honor that. I was reading an article about mindfulness in schools, and there was this little girl, and she was, they were obviously interviewing the kids about mindfulness. So they sort of know what the deal is. Like they know that they're supposed to say that mindfulness is amazing, right? But
amazing.
This little girl was like, mindfulness didn't work for me. The way that my body calms down is through dance. So that is what I like to do. And that is how my body calms down. And I said, good for her for being so brave to say it.
Yes.
And recognizing that about herself. So I love that, that she was able to say that. And I think it really honors kids as humans when we can say to them, you figured out something that works for you. Great. It doesn't hurt anybody else. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't hurt property. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I can imagine then if you had a child in front of you who's saying, my mom or my, teacher is always telling me to take deep breaths when I'm, getting upset or when I'm stressed out, but I do it and it doesn't help. And so this doesn't work for me. And there's nothing that works for me. That you can then be able to say, you know what, that like doesn't work for everybody. In fact, I've got somebody who likes to do jumping jacks when they're feeling frustrated or stressed. Or I like somebody who likes to beat on the desk with their hands and drum on the desk when they're feeling stressed. So that you're providing some insight into you're not weird. There's kids that are, like all different kinds of things. And maybe we just haven't found your thing yet. Like maybe we should try some other things. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, when I start working with kids and as I work with them over time, I tell them your coping skills will change. What worked for you when you were 10 will not work for you when you're 16. Some things might stay, but you're going to be bigger. And it's good to know that you can add to your skills, because then as you become an adult, you still need them. And so let's make sure that we're using them and figuring out what will work and what will help you to be able to manage, because life is tough.
Oh, it is tough. I mean, especially right now, we're really seeing how stressed and anxious people can get. Would you say, just piggybacking off of what you just said, that would you say like different types of coping skills can be used by kids or teens? Do you suggest different kinds of coping skills based on different age groups? Is there something that you do with the younger kids that you might not do with the older kids, or vice versa? How can you break that down for us?
So for me, I use like the same sort of idea of a coping skill, but I age it up or age it down. So if you take just deep breathing, which, I do start with kids, because of the way that it really does physiologically impact you,
right,
to help you get out of that fight, flight, or freeze, step back down to rest and digest. So I try to introduce different ways of breathing, because it is so important.
Oh, good.
So for little kids, what I do is I like to have them use a stuffed animal and put it on their belly and move the stuffed animal up and down. But I wouldn't ask my 15-year-old guy client to do that. He'd look at me like I was strange, and he'd probably walk out. So what I have him do is I look for GIFs, or I look for videos that are short, that have a shape that's cool to look at, like an expanding or shrinking shape, and have them breathe with the shape. So it's still breathing, but it's breathing in a way that won't make a teenager look odd. Like if they're looking at their phone, nobody knows that they're looking at this breathing GIF and breathing. You know what I mean?
Right, because you could take it with you then. It's not just in the office, obviously. We want this to generalize to their life. So if they need it, they could take out their phone and use it.
Yep, absolutely. And nobody knows.
And they're not taking out a stuffed bunny.
Right, exactly. And looking strange in the middle of science.
Right, science class. Let me just put this stuffed bunny on my stomach. Give me a moment. I'm going to lie down on your floor.
But you know what? A first grader would totally do that.
Totally do that. And it would be completely fine. And in fact, everybody else would be like, where's my stuffed bunny? I want to lie on the floor and do it too.
Exactly.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Can we generalize that now to another type of coping skill where you might take it from young to old, just so that we can understand it again?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say something like, if we're thinking about a movement coping skill.
Sure.
So for little kids, I like to have them do wall push-ups. So it's just like a push-up, but against a wall. So it's a little bit easier, but just a little bit of body movement, a little bit of action in their body to help them sort of process. For older kids, I have them take a walk. Honestly, take a walk and get a drink. And I would actually send my middle schoolers on what I called the Halloran walk, which was they had to walk down the hallway, get a drink, then walk down another hallway, get a drink, walk down the hallway, get another drink, then go back to class.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny and genius. It gives them specific benchmarks of success, and it gets them back to where they want to go. I love it.
But here's the thing. It was a tough middle school, so I didn't want them to get in trouble. So I always had to give them the pass.
Oh, yes.
Because the last thing I wanted to do was another adult to come by and be like, why aren't you in class?
You already had a drink of water. I saw you in the past hallway.
Exactly. You were down that other hallway. And I was like, leave him alone. He's just calm. Let him go.
Yeah, now we have to start from scratch. Okay, so that is awesome. I really love that idea. Why don't we take a deeper dive into each kind of coping skill section? So for calming coping skills, what are some great examples that you think would be most effective? Obviously, we've talked about breathing, but another one, some of the other ones that you think would be most effective for kids and teens, and how would a parent or educator teach that effective coping skill to a young person if the young person was sitting in front of us right now?
Absolutely. So one thing that I really enjoy doing is using imagination. So I have kids and teens imagine their favorite place, or a place that is calming for them. So it could be their bedroom. It could be the beach. It could be grandma's house. It doesn't even have to be real. It could be, I had one girl tell me once that she imagined herself in fluffy clouds with rainbows and unicorns. And I said, cool.
Great.
That sounds amazing. I want to go.
I'd like to go there, and let's have something to drink, a little hot chocolate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to really be able to imagine what that place is and really actually involve as many senses as you can. So what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? What are the things that you taste when you're there? What does it feel like? All of those sort of senses to really get them to be able to take a little mini vacation wherever they are. So for the kids who don't want other people to know that they are using a coping skill, this is perfect. So it's in their brain.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what's going on.
Right.
And for the littler ones, they can actually like draw it, or they can have a picture that they look at. But it's just something where you really are able to use that. And when educators or parents are talking to them and saying, you know, if you're having a hard time, you can just like take a little mini vacation, like take a few minutes. If remote school is driving you nuts today, take a few minutes, take a little mini vacation, and then go back in.
Right. You can even have like a cue word with your student or your child, so that you're not saying it in front of the class, so that they know that they're now going to, you know, go to their favorite place in their head and have that moment, and understanding that you're catching them before it gets to a point where they're over the edge and the amygdala has taken over and you're not going to reach that child for a certain amount of time. So it's great to be able to have a technique to calm and a sort of a go-to as things are starting to ramp up, as instead of waiting for the tip over. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh my goodness, yes. I'm always about prevention. As much as we can do to talk about and practice skills when kids are calm, so that we can use them and be able to sort of catch it early before things sort of escalate and it's hard to rein it in. Then it's just, you're just waiting for it to be over and then go on.
Right, exactly. My friend is a psychiatrist and also was interviewed on this podcast, Dr. Dara Harris, and she was talking about how, you know, once you get to that point and the amygdala sort of sent down the gate, as she calls it, and it's like, you know, 20 minutes plus or minus 2 before you're going to get to that child, that, you know, you want to prevent that from happening as much as possible, because you really are playing a waiting game. And of course, what do adults do in that moment when the child has, you know, already fallen off the deep end at that point, but be like, calm down, you got to calm down, take a breath. And they're like, they can't do anything at that point. Like, you're not reaching them. They are no longer home, and you're going to have to wait until they get there again.
Absolutely. I'm always like, right now is not the time.
No.
This is not a teachable moment.
This is not your teachable moment.
You are riding the wave.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. No, that's so true. All right, let's move on to the physical coping skills. So what are some examples that we haven't covered already? We talked about your walk around the hallway. What are some of the examples that you think would be the most effective, that would help a child or teen better cope with the stressors and anger in their lives? And if they were sitting in front of you right now, how could you teach them to do that?
So I love, I talked about big body movements before, but what I sometimes like to do is really focus on the small body movements as well, like squeezing something, just squeezing the heck out of something can feel so good. Remember, I had this one middle school boy. He loved to squeeze my Play-Doh so hard it would like fall between his fingers and like onto the floor.
Satisfying.
Exactly. There's something so satisfying about squeezing. So, you know, being able to squeeze things like Play-Doh, Theraputty, all the different resistances of that, you know, the different colors, different kids sort of gravitate towards one or the other. You know, I had kids who love the red and the blue and kids who really like the black one where it's like really hard to squeeze. So just being able to do that, and then having, you know, something where they can, there's something else called, oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Mad Matter. Have you ever played with Mad Matter?
I don't think I have. Okay, I missed out.
My goodness, the word that everybody uses when they touch it is satisfying.
Ooh, I love that. And my
Yes.
son loves that word, by the way. He's like, he uses it so appropriately too. He's like, yeah, that's really satisfying. That feels really satisfying. Oh, okay. I may have to get this for him then.
Oh my goodness. So it's sort of like kinetic sand, but
Yes.
it has a nicer feel to it.
Okay.
And it doesn't dry out. It sort of sticks together. It does, and it's amazing. Like, you can leave it out all day. I have brought it to presentations with educators, and people honestly audibly sigh when they touch it.
Gosh, that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, people are like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool." And the thing is, when I was traveling all over the States, I would bring it with me, and it would always get me caught and when I was trying to go through security.
Yeah, they're like, what is this substance?
I'd be like, you're like, you should try it.
Yeah, you should try it. It's very satisfying. And ma'am, will you come aside with us?
Basically every time.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And I like that idea of small movements to offer instead of just the big movements. Sometimes kids don't want to, run in place or do jumping jacks or even take a walk. So you got to meet them where they are and have some different techniques for them so that they're able to improve and they're able to kind of take it with them. I'm going to imagine that this substance is something that maybe comes in, I don't know, some kind of container that you would take with you. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So it comes in, it comes in like a Ziploc sort of thing. I think I got mine at Michael's, or I think they even have it at Target now, Hobby Lobby. But then what I do is when I see kids, if I bring it with us when I'm going to see them, I will just put it out on a plate.
Okay. And they're just playing with it. So awesome.
Just playing with it while we're sitting there. We're just chatting and talking. And
yes.
It's kind of moldable too. So you can mold it into a ball, and then it will satisfyingly go through your fingers. It's really cool.
Oh, this is great. Okay. And then finally, we've got our distracting coping skills, which we didn't really discuss before. And I know, many people might hear that term and argue, but everyone has to face their feelings and their stressors if they want to get through them. And we've got to, face them head on, and people need to learn this. So how are distracting coping skills used effectively when we would use them? When would we use them, and give us some examples of the skills we should teach our kids today or this week.
Yep. So here's what I always say when it comes to distraction. I don't want kids to ignore their feelings or suppress them or deny them. I don't want that to happen at all. But there are times when you are so overwhelmed that your brain needs a break. It just needs a break from being that stressed, overwhelmed, anxious. There are also other times where you've talked through it all, and you've identified the things you can control and the things you can't control. And so to try and come up with something to keep you distracted so that you don't go back up to the top of that spiral again, which is so hard. I've done this so many times. You walk through the spiral, you talk through the spiral of anxiety, right? And then all of a sudden you're right back up at the top.
Somehow it's like you give a mouse a cookie. It just winds up, you go through, and then you wind up in the exact same place. Absolutely.
Right. And so what I'd like to do with distraction is okay, so we've gone through this spiral a couple times. Let's break this up. Let's do something else. So I really love using play for little kids, and fun, playful activities for teens as well. So play is a natural stress reliever for kids. It's how they communicate. They share their emotions. They process so much stuff through their play. So I want kids to play. I want them to play board games. I want them to build. I want them to draw and create and imagine and think about things in a different way, and play with cardboard. I remember just bringing out cardboard when my kids were little. Just go to town, guys, and have a good time.
Okay, this is so important, and understanding that it's okay to to use play to calm down. And it may be the very thing that allows children to then talk out their feelings because they're calm. I mean, you can't be talking about your feelings when you're in such a heightened state. So it does provide some calming, and it may provide their ability to see things in a different way. You never know. So if you want your children to be able to let their feelings out in a positive way, or at least I'm going to say not destructive ways, because, it doesn't even need to be positive, right? It's just like not destructive.
Right.
So, right? Like, thank you very much. In order to get out their anger or their anxiety, or fear, scared, they're sad. How can we then help our kids to process their feelings so that they don't get brushed under the rug and come out in regretful ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I really think that it's so important to just start with feelings identification, like being able to name your feelings. Dr. Dan Siegel, name it to tame it.
Yes.
I live by that.
Yes. He's been on this podcast too, and I agree. That is a good one.
Because I think it's just even starting when they're little, just being able to talk about emotions, label their feelings, label their emotions, and recognize, feelings come and go. This is what life is. Adults get mad, adults get sad, adults get happy. So do kids. And so let's talk about it. And let's talk about, the kids that we see on TV. Let's talk about the characters we're reading about. Let's talk about the TV show people that we're seeing. You know what I mean? To be able to really start to identify and recognize feelings is huge. And then to be able to figure out, okay, so that I make those connections. So this situation made me feel this way. Interesting. And just sort of be like, all right, that's an interesting thing to note. If that's something that makes me really anxious, I wonder about the next time it's happening. What should be my plan? What can I come up with? What should I do when I know that I'm faced with a situation that has connected with me before in a way that's made me anxious or in a way that's made me sad or worried?
Oh, yes. I like that a lot. So that they're able to have the words to express themselves and also find the correct solution to deal with that particular emotion, and even be able to have somebody who they are able to say it to, so that there is some connection and camaraderie and that ability to not feel so alone, which we know is important for kids.
Yes, absolutely. They don't want to feel alone. That's one of those things that's like a protective factor when it comes to those adverse childhood experiences, talking about feelings and making sure that you feel supported at home with your family, that people are caring and hearing about what's going on for you and that you are cared for and you are loved.
So important. So, I wanted to bring up this term that we hear a lot, but I think is at this point like getting a little, poo-pooed because people talk about it so much, but it's important. So let's talk about self-care. It's a sort of a buzz term, right? And it's thrown around a lot these days because people are like, you need self-care, because people are going out of their minds. So how do you feel that self-care relates to coping skills, and which ones are really you think they'd be really important ones for people to take away today so that they use them with their kids, or at least introduce their kids to them?
Absolutely. So I have to say that, I struggle with self-care just in general, and I don't know if it's the term or whatever. And I think that nothing like COVID will make you highlight how much you need self-care.
No kidding. You're like, this is your moment, even though you've been trying to escape it. Here it is.
Right. There's nothing you can do now.
Yeah.
Like, you really got to tackle this.
Yes.
And so I think about a lot of times we talk about self-care with adults, and I think about basically self-care as like coping skills for adults. That is how I relate that.
And people are like, I don't have time to take a bath.
Right,
exactly.
exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's because self-care, what do we envision? But like a person in a robe with like cucumbers on their eyes about to step into a hot bath, which, I mean, it doesn't sound bad. I'm not saying it sounds bad. It just like sounds a little unrealistic at times when you're like, I just don't have the moment for that.
Right, exactly. And so what I've been saying to people, and the thing that actually helped me shift my thinking a little bit around self-care, is I started using the word re-energize or recharge my batteries.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about like, how freaked out do I get when my battery on my phone gets below 10%? Like that never happens, ever. But we let it happen to ourselves all the time.
Right. Or the gas that's like almost on empty, right? Like that, like I was like, how can I equate that to myself? Well, oh, right. The gas gauge. Oh my gosh. Right.
Right. And so you think about it as sort of like re-energizing, refilling your cup, refilling your gas tank, those sorts of things. And it feels a little bit less intense in terms of like self-care. Like I think sometimes people think about self-care, it means like you have to go to a spa for 3 days. No, who has time for that? No,
Yes.
you can't even
sounds
go.
delightful. Can we go after this? And you bring the chocolate, please.
Right, I will. Absolutely. I'm on board. I just want to get a massage.
Yes. I'm with you on this.
Oh my goodness. I never realized how much
And that's the end of our podcast, everybody. We have places to go.
But that's the thing. So it's figuring out what are those things that bring you joy, that you enjoy doing as a child, that make you happy, that give your brain a break as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
What are those things? And it doesn't have to be like maybe especially when you have little ones, it could be hiding in the closet and drinking a cup of tea for 5 seconds by yourself. Like if that's what you have time for. If that gives you a little bit of energy to then go back into your world, do it. Do it.
They always find you, but yes, I agree with
Oh
you.
my
Like
gosh,
just
they
a
are like-
little bit of time to just breathe or cry or drink your tea. Such a good idea. Like I'd make an announcement in my house, like, Mommy's going to the bathroom. I am going to close the door. I will be in there and I will not be coming out for the next 2 minutes, you know. Like I needed to declare my self-care moment just because like I just need to not be called mom for just 2 minutes. Just let me, do my thing. It is important to know that self-care doesn't need to be, a 5-day trip with the girls, although that sounds nice, or the boys, that sounds nice. But it can be, 5 minutes, taking a shower or, being in the closet drinking your tea. All can be interesting self-care. And I also would note that obviously kids need it as well. I have found, and I find this really interesting, that my daughter has realized the effect of water on her. So she takes a lot of showers, and it's definitely not because she's dirty, but she uses it to just keep herself calm and to just make herself feel good and just give herself some moments. She puts on music and she takes a shower. And I think that's a great way of dealing with the stressors of life. And it's definitely been happening more lately that while we've been home with school and everything else, that the kids need it. So helping them and encouraging them to discover those ways, and understanding that some simple techniques might not be used in the way you think that they're going to be used. Like showers aren't just to, clean somebody, maybe used to calm somebody.
Exactly. And I think about, I had a client who is a huge Harry Potter fan, and there's something so soothing about those books for her.
Yes.
So she just rereads them, and it just brings her comfort and it brings her relaxation, and she feels so much better just reading it and talking about it and that kind of thing. But to other people, they're like, you're reading the Harry Potter books again?
Yeah. Like you already know what's going to happen. Well, that's actually the calming part. Like we no longer have to worry that somebody is about to die or, somebody is about to get hurt or somebody's about to get lost. Like we already know what's about to happen in that moment. It's the same reason why a lot of people will, watch the same thing over and over again. There's something comforting in already knowing the story and knowing how it's going to end.
Yep. And I'm one of those people.
Me too.
Rewatch.
I was kind of talking about myself.
I totally rewatch. I'm such a rewatcher.
Yes, I'm a rewatcher, especially when it comes to like old time stories or, things that, you just have that happy ending. I'm a sucker for a happy ending. So please complete this sentence. Children and teens need coping skills to deal with stress, anxiety, and anger because
we want them to be able to deal with stress, anxiety, and anger as adults as well, and interact and have good relationships and good work skills and just be able to manage everything that life throws at them in a safe and a healthy way.
Right, because we need them as adults. So we want to try them and use them as children. Sometimes because the stakes are lower, not all the time, but sometimes the stakes are lower. And certainly when we're in a situation with somebody like you who can guide us and work through them with us in such a, kind and supportive way, so that, when we're in a situation, when we're not with somebody who is supporting us or giving us that space, that we have the right thing to do for us, and we know what to do in that moment.
Yeah, that's when my clients say to me, I thought about you, and I thought about the plan that we talked about, and I made a plan in my head about things I could do to help myself, and I actually did it, and it worked. It
worked. Your stuff is not hogwash. Like, it actually works.
I know. They're like, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I may know a thing or two about what I'm doing. Awesome. Give us your top tip. What do you want us to come away with after listening to this podcast that we may want to use with our kids, or that we may want to remember long after we shut this podcast off?
Oh my gosh. I think the thing that we should remember as adults is that we need to take care of ourselves as well. We need to be doing our own coping skills so we can be good role models for our children, for our clients, for our students. When they see us being able to identify our emotions, when they see us saying, I need 5 minutes, or I need a break, or I'm going to take this drink of water, I'm going to go for a little walk, that's powerful, because that shows them you have feelings too. Sometimes you have bad days, and you can figure out how to deal with it. There are ways that you can deal with it. You have power over how you feel, and there are things you can do to change it. There are things you can do to help mitigate all the things that are happening around you.
I really like that. And I love the modeling piece. I often talk about parenting out loud or teaching out loud, where you're able to take what you're doing and actually express it in words so that the kids hear you, understand that you're going through something of your own, and that it's okay, it's normal, and in fact, it's healthy to do these coping skills that you've talked about, and that you are better for it. And that is one of the great ways of being able to show your kids how to adopt some of these practices. It's not about telling them, here, do some deep breathing when you're, in that middle of ranting and raving. And by the way, I have been caught mid-yell, thank you very much, by my kids asking me to calm down, take some deep breaths, and take a moment for myself. Thank you. It's always great when that happens. I really appreciate it. But it's true, and it does work. And my daughter is aces at that. Mom.
I know.
Mom. Mom. It's okay. We're going to be okay. Let's take some deep breaths.
I know, it's so funny when they take it and they've obviously taken it in, and now they're using it, and you're like, oh no.
I know, no. Okay. I'm proud and frustrated at the same time, with myself, but I think it is great, and that will be a strength of hers going forward. And by the way, yes, of course, we all have bad days, and there is nothing inhuman about me. Yes, I have many, many bad days, and I say the wrong thing. I do the wrong thing. I get really good at apologizing. Thank you. Yeah. And yes, my daughter sometimes is in that role. So there you go.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think the thing is, when parents feel like people really, when other parents hear other people talking about, oh, I had a bad day, it makes them feel less alone. Yes. I have bad days. We all do. My daughter told me the other day, she was like, you are working too hard. You need to take a break.
Oh, that's so sweet. It's such a thoughtful girl. Give us the resource of the week. Where can we go to get more information about you, your books, and the work you're doing?
If people want to visit copingskillsforkids.com, that's where everything lives. I have a lot of resources on there, and then all sorts of other things that people can use and work with kids and teens.
Thank you very much. And I know that they will go there. And I just want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I think this was so incredibly helpful. I love how hands-on the skills are that you provide. You can really see them and feel them and know that some of these are definitely going to work for your child. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. Well, I've got my takeaways, and sweet friends, I know you have yours. Let's discuss them. Come up on Facebook. You can go to the Dr. Robyn Silverman page, or let's chat about it at drrobynsilverman.com or twitter.com/Dr. Robyn. I'm also on Instagram under Dr. Robyn Silverman. And please, if you love this podcast like I did, I hope you'll go up to iTunes and rate and review it so other people can learn about Janine's interesting and fascinating and helpful strategies for coping for all of our kids, for all of our teens. The more that we are exposing this podcast, the more people will get the information that they need to use in their own homes and schools. So I truly appreciate it. That's all the time we have for today, my fellow parents, leaders, and educators. Thank you so much for tuning in to How to Talk to Kids About Anything. For more information on books, articles, speaking engagements, or curriculum, please visit drrobynsilverman.com. There's so many great podcasts up there, and the show notes to this podcast will be up there as well. I look forward to weathering the storms and enjoying the sunny side of life together. And please remember, even on the days when you fall short, you've got this, you're here, you're getting the information you need. I know it's not easy, but never forget there's always tomorrow. Parenting is the ultimate do-over. Perhaps you heard something today and you're like, okay, I've been doing the deep breathing, but that hasn't been working. Now I realize there's some other things I could have tried in that moment. Don't bash yourself. Don't shame yourself. Don't worry about what you did or what you said. At this point, you can try again. You can do it differently. You can do it differently next time. You can apologize and do it again right now. I get it. I see you and I'm right there with you. And as there are moments when we doubt our know-how, our choices, and our sweet sanity, please know you're 10 times the parent you think you are. Until next time, this is Dr. Robyn Silverman with How to Talk to Kids About Anything. Please tune in again and keep connecting through conversation. See you next week.
You've been listening to How to Talk to Kids About Anything with Dr. Robyn Silverman. For more information on books, articles, speaking engagements, or curriculum, please visit drrobynsilverman.com.